Hello everybody, welcome back to another video of me explaining the plot and characters of American Horror Story. Roanoke is a very divisive season. If you thought Hotel was divisive, Roanoke is way more divisive in my opinion. I would say the majority of people do not like this season. When I think of American Horror Story, this is like far from one of the first seasons that I think of when I think of seasons that I actually enjoyed. It's far from perfect. I would say the first 5 episodes are a lot better than the latter half of the season. The last 5 episodes they're not bad, they're just very different from what I'm used to. As you can see, we have 8, technically 4 main characters. It's really hard to draw the line of who's a main character and who is not in this season, because there are a couple characters that are considered main characters that literally have one scene essentially, and I just feel as though that doesn't really work for me. And I'm basically gonna make up the rules and say that nope, that person's not a main character, they don't deserve a big picture. Even though I gave her a main character picture and she's like literally in one scene, it'll make sense in a minute, I'm gonna get to that. Basically, just know some of these people are not considered main characters and some of them are. And then some of these people aren't considered supporting, but on this board, that's exactly what I'm giving them because it feels as though they don't deserve a big picture. If you've already seen the season, you'll know that about half of the characters are missing from the board, and that is because they come in later. I debated doing this, I debated not doing it. It'll spoil it for people later on who haven't actually seen the series and want to just watch my recap instead of the series. So Roanoke is structured a little bit differently. It is essentially like one of those true crime documentaries that you see on, I don't know, like the History Channel or something. And it's kind of like structured like that, but it's fictional. None of this ever happens. So it's like a fake true crime paranormal documentary where we have the original characters that this event happened to, and then we have people who are portraying the characters that that event happened to. But just know, these girlies are quote-unquote real people. These girlies are portraying the real people in a documentary that this season of American Horror Story is based on, called My Roanoke Nightmare. If you've not seen the season, this is gonna make absolutely no sense, so I highly recommend watching at least like the first episode if you want to understand what I'm talking about more, if you don't already get the concept. It's extremely meta. It's extremely meta, so if you don't understand what I'm talking about, this video is not gonna make any fucking sense for you. So I would suggest at least going and just watching the first episode. If you don't want to watch the rest of the season, that's fine. You could even just watch like the first 10 minutes and you would get the concept. But if this isn't making sense to you, then go watch that and then come back and then I will explain the rest of it later on. So we have our 3 main girlies up here. We have Shelby Miller, Matt Miller, and Lee Miller. Lee and Matt are siblings, and then Matt and Shelby are husband and wife. Matt and Shelby move into this really old abandoned farmhouse in the middle of fuck-ass nowhere in North Carolina. They come to realize that they are living on the haunted grounds of the old Roanoke colony. They actually moved inland according to the show and set up camp near where this house is now located. So the person who built the house built it on the haunted grounds of the Roanoke colony. And if you don't know what the Roanoke colony is, this video isn't going to make any sense for you either. Basically, it was this haunted colony. The show's referenced it before back in Murder House when Billie Dean Howard, mother, was giving the rundown to Constance and Violet about the word Croatoan and how it banishes spirits. We're going to get into that in this season as well. But yeah, this season is only called Roanoke because of the fact that the house was built on the Roanoke colony's land. All you need to know is that these 3 move into the house and are quickly haunted by these ghost colonists that live on the grounds. And once they escape, they tell their story to the media and sell the rights, I guess, to their story to this producer who makes this show with the reenactors down here to dramatize the whole situation. And they give testimonials. The only time we see these actors is in the testimonials. These actors are actually acting out the events that these people experienced a year or so prior to that. Everything that happened to them happened in fall of 2014. The reenactments were shot in summer of 2015 and then aired in October of 2015. Another thing to note, the cinematographer, Michael Goy, the genius by the way, that was behind the first 5 seasons, has left. So the show has switched from film cameras to digital. So So everything looks fucking different now. The cinematography this season, absolutely awful. Terrible, even. A lot of it is shot on an iPhone, and we're gonna get into that later. Also, the episodes are like 10 minutes shorter, so you get less. The episodes go from 13 episode seasons to 10 episode seasons. So from here on out, it's really just, it's downhill. It really is. And there's some seasons that are better than others in this crop of seasons that we're about to come up on. But season 5 was really like a turning point for this show, and I think it needs to be studied more. So since it took me a little bit longer to explain the concept, let's get on into the characters. Just know, when I point at her and something that happened to her, we actually see it happening to her. Because the show is presented to us as if we were the viewers of this television show. We don't actually see behind the curtain or anything in the first 5 episodes. So the only thing we know is the show is being presented to us as if we are watching My Roanoke Nightmare, the TV show, the fictional TV show, by the way. Oh, is this making sense? I really hope it is. When we see something happening to her, or something happening to him, or a conversation between these 3, or any of these characters, it originally happened to these girlies. When I point to her, I'm also pointing to her, and so on and so forth. You may be questioning, why did you give a big picture to her when she's in like one scene? Well, that's because I gave a big picture to Kathy Bates, and Kathy Bates is portraying the real life butcher who has no lines. This season doesn't make any sense, does it? Okay, let me just try to explain the characters now. So we have Shelby Miller. She is basically just the same as Vivian in season 1. Like, it's very much giving yoga mom. I don't really have anything else to say about that other than the fact that her only other character trait is that she screams her husband's name about 45 times in each episode, and she has to say it that many times, or else she can't say that she's lived another day on Earth. She absolutely serves nothing, if I'm being honest with you. I love Sarah Paulson and I love Lily Rabe, but this is just a bad character in my opinion. Boring, forgettable. Unfortunately, the characters this season really take a backseat to the plot. That's unfortunate because I really like the character-driven seasons rather than the plot-driven seasons, and from here on out, the show really turns to plot-driven seasons. Next, we have Matt Miller. Now, Matt, he is a family man. I think he's a traveling salesman. You know, he's also kind of boring. These two, kind of insufferable if I'm being honest with you. I like the other characters a lot more than these two, but they're supposed to be our main couple, and they're really kind of annoying. And if I'm being honest with you, one of my least favorite parts of this season, because they are the focus of the season, it drags for me. Anyway, moving on to Lee. This is the mother of the century, and if you try to argue with me about that, I'm just gonna prove you wrong, because Adina Porter absolutely serves. The wig, and Angela Bassett serves as well, and this counterpart, while they might be complete opposites, what I'm about to say doesn't really make sense, but it kind of does. Angela Bassett is poorly cast to portray Adina Porter. Not that Angela Bassett is a bad actress, she's amazing, she's flawless, but Adina Porter is much more toned down than Angela Bassett, who is so overdramatic about everything in the best way possible, by the way. I can't tell if it's a good move or a bad move to have these two play the same character, because I can't tell if they chose it and it was a bad decision because they just couldn't figure out anyone else to cast for it, or I can't tell if it's actually a good decision because sometimes in like reenactments, the reenactors look and act nothing like the original people, so I can't tell if they're being really ironic with it. These 3 have such a disconnect to these 3. So then we have the Butcher. Now, the Butcher is not an actual character in this group. We don't ever really see her at all. We see the reenactment done by Kathy Bates, and this is absolutely fucking slayful, if I'm just being honest with you. She serves. Love her. Her accent is amazing. Kathy Bates, she always does an amazing job in this show. Like, if I'm being honest with you, she's like top 5. I'm just gonna gloss over these girlies really quick because they're not that important. These two are the Polks. Now, there's like 5 to 8 of the Polks. Basically, the Polks is a family that lives right next to the Roanoke house, and they are basically their neighbors. Oh, also, by the way, everybody in this row is an actor. They're not real people. They are playing the real people, and they are actors. They are outbid when trying to buy the mansion, and they end up buying it. But they are outbid, and so they have to go back to their farm and be inbred. This is Edward Mordrake. He is the one that built the house in the 1700s, and we'll get into that. This is Cricket. He absolutely fucking serves. I love him so much. His accent, I miss Leslie Jordan every single day. Then we have Ambrose. He's one of the butcher's sons. We have Flora, who is Lee's daughter. We have Mason, who is Lee's husband. We have Scathach, played by Lady Gaga. She is just a witch in the woods. She's not a part of the colony, but I'll get into that later. Finally, we have Elias Cunningham. Now, he is a doctor that lived in the house in the 90s. He doesn't live there anymore, but he did make it out alive, and we're gonna see some of him later on. But just for now, just know he used to live in the house and he was getting as much intel from the house as he possibly could. All right, so hopefully the concept makes sense. If it doesn't, I'm really sorry. Just trust me, it'll make sense in a minute. For each episode, I'm gonna talk about the 2014 original events that are being portrayed by them. I'm also gonna talk about the testimonies given by each of these three in each of the episodes because it reveals much more about character as well. So let's get on into it. I'm gonna do my absolute best to try and explain the timeline in a way that makes sense. This is gonna be a very difficult season to explain because it's very plot driven and there's a lot that happens. It's very different from Hotel because Hotel was very character driven. This is very plot driven. Episode 1 begins August 8th, 2014. The first thing we see is the opening to the My Roanoke Nightmare show. It's like a teaser, I guess. And we basically get a couple of flashes throughout the episode, like a little bit of teasers to what is to come. We see the portrayals of Matt and Shelby, and then we also get testimonials, little quotes from Shelby and Matt and Lee as well. But yeah, on August 8th, the original events that took place, we have Shelby and Matt who are living in LA at the time. Matt has just got promoted and Shelby has just learned that she is pregnant, so they go out for a celebratory walk when they are attacked. And Matt has to go to the hospital and they believe that he's in a coma, but as soon as Shelby gets near him and holds his hand, he wakes up from his coma. Shelby, literally right then and there, loses the baby. About a month later, it is now day 1 in the actual story, September 10th. It is now day 1 in the actual story. It is September 10th, 2014. During a picnic in the woods, by the way, they decided to move back to Matt's home state of North Carolina. They are going for a picnic in the woods and Shelby stumbles upon the house. They call it the Big Shaker Mansion, but basically they stumble upon the house and see a for sale sign in the yard. And the next day they come back. It is now day 2, September 11th. They buy the Big Shaker Mansion and outbid the Polks. That's important to remember for later. The Polks, who live nearby in a farm, they're trying to buy this other farmhouse for themselves, but they outbid the Polks because the Polks are kind of inbred. They're kind of inbred. They don't have the city folk money, so they lose the house, and that's important for later. We jump down a couple days. Matt and Shelby, it is now day 5, September 14th. Matt and Shelby are getting all moved in. They get a little uneasy in the house. They feel a little uneasy in the house. They hear pigs squealing outside in the middle of the night. We go down to day 6 the next day. It's September 15th. Matt has gone away on a business trip and Shelby has been left alone in the house to practice her yoga. There's a hailstorm, so she looks outside and all of a sudden she fucking sees teeth falling from the sky. Yes, human teeth falling from the sky. How is this possible, you may ask? We don't get an explanation. The next day, it is day 7, September 16th. Shelby decides to go for a bath outside in the tub that's just out in their backyard for some reason. And during this bath, she is attacked by these colonists, except she doesn't see them because she's blinded, babes, because like the water's shooting everywhere. She can't see what's going on. So as soon as she gets out of the tub, she reaches for her phone and calls 911 and then calls Matt, who races back home. And the cops, they don't believe her. One thing about the cops in this season, they don't believe fucking anything. Matt is hesitant to believe her, but he does still believe her because like why would she make that up? So that night, Matt goes outside because he hears a pig squealing and then discovers a butchered pig on their doorstep. And then it is now day 8, September 17th. Matt has installed security cameras to keep an eye out because he believes that the Polks are up to this because they did lose the auction. So he believes that it's the Polks that are trying to terrorize them. After installing the cameras, he also asks Lee to move in with him to keep an eye on Shelby because one thing about Lee, she is a former cop. Lee moves in to protect Shelby from whatever evil malevolent forces are outside. Matt leaves on another business trip. We can see in Lee's testimonial, she's not a huge fan of Shelby. She says that yoga is not a job. So Lee thinks that Shelby's an absolute phony and does not agree happy with this marriage at all. We get a flashback during Lee's testimonial to December 10th, 2013. We see Lee get fired from being a police officer after the cops discover prescription pain pills in her car and discover that she is an addict. And then a few months later, her husband Mason gets a divorce from her. This would be February 21st, 2014, and takes their daughter Flora for full custody, and she just gets the weekends, I believe. Moving back to day 8, Lee and Shelby are arguing because obviously they don't like each other, and they hear something downstairs, so they both go down to investigate and find these VHS tapes that are playing on this TV on a loop. And on the VHS tapes are Dr. Elias Cunningham, who used to live in the house, and he's basically warning anybody who finds the tapes to leave. They see a man on these VHS tapes wearing a pig's head, which looks an awful like the Piggy Man from Murder House. Yes, that is indeed the same Piggy Man. Matt returns home and is hesitant to believe their story. He does see the VHS tape, but doesn't really believe anything in it. He thinks that it's just the pulks. Shelby then randomly fucking leaves the situation because she wants to leave and Matt does not. So she gets in Matt's car. All of a sudden, she's on the road and this fuck-ass lady comes out of nowhere and Shelby fucking hits her. Well, it's really this Shelby. She fucking gets up and walks back into the woods. Okay, so then Shelby chases after her. As soon as she gets into the woods, she sees this fucking guy who has been scalped, just walking around. Oh my goodness, Gwally. And that's where episode 1 ends. Alright, so episode 2 opens the next day, rather the next morning. Lee finds Shelby in the woods after Shelby sees a human sacrifice ritual that the butcher is performing on one of the colonists, one of the ghosts. Lee ends up taking Shelby to the hospital. At the hospital, Shelby decides that they need to stay in the house and fight back against the evil pulks that are doing this to them. And that sentiment does not stick around for too long once they see what else happens. We jump forward a couple days. It is day 13, September 22nd. Flora, who is, as I mentioned before, Lee's daughter, arrives for Lee's visitation. Flora meets with Priscilla, who is a ghost on the grounds that's part of the butcher's group of colonists, and they become friends. Lee does not believe Flora that she has a best friend named Priscilla. All right, so it is now day 14, September 23rd, 2014. In the middle of the night, Matt wakes up and sees these 2 nurses that are ghosts, by the way. I believe their names are Miranda and Bridget. I did not put their pictures on the board because they're not really important. These 2 nurses kill one of their patients and then spray paint the letter M on the wall and say, M is for Margaret. So Matt calls the cops after seeing this. The police don't find anything. So we'll get our answer soon about what that is. The next day, it is day 15, September 24th. Mason has arrived to pick Flora up from her visitation with her mom. Flora tells her mom and her dad that Priscilla said that the other ghosts are gonna kill all of them and save Flora for last, and this pisses Mason off. Mason storms off, vowing to never let her come back to the house after hearing your child say some shit like that. That'd be horrifying. Day 16, September 25th, Matt and Shelby find a root cellar in the house, or I guess outside the house, and this leads them to more VHS tapes filmed by Elias Cunningham. These videos were recorded on October 11th, 1997. He tells the story of Miranda and Bridget, the nurses from before. He says that Miranda and Bridget, on February 11th, 1989, these 2 nurses basically rented this house to use as like a way to carry out their murdering spree, where they would kill one person for every letter of the word murder and then spray paint their name on the wall. The whole M is for Margaret thing was them killing someone because their name was Margaret. But eventually, October 29th, 1989, a little under a year later, Miranda and Bridget are killed by the colonists and dismembered. The police arrive to check in on the nurses who they believe to have gone missing because there's no part of them remaining. So they pause the video and then go back into the house to find that, yes, below the wallpaper, it does say murder, but without the R. The next day, it is day 17, September 26th, 2014. Lee arrives at the house with Flora as she has kidnapped Flora from Mason. So Matt and Shelby call Mason and tell him that Flora is okay, she's just with her mother. So as Mason is on his way, Shelby sends Flora in to go do her homework in another room, and all of a sudden Flora goes missing. These girlies all run out into the woods and search for her, and they come to this really tall ass fucking tree and see that her hoodie is at the very top of the tree. That's basically where the episode ends. So continuing on from the last episode, it is still day 17, September 26th. The police have arrived to help Lee search for her daughter, as well as Mason. So the search party splits up. Lee finds her daughter's doll near the Polk farm with a pig head around it, and then finds a pig's body that's been decapitated with the doll's head on it. They go into the Polk farm. Oh, and by the way, there's buckets of shit in this family's house. They find these two boys sucking the milk out of a pig. That's fucking foul. The boys then at social services, or I guess at the hospital, I don't know where they are, they start screaming the word Croatoan over and over again. It's now day 20, so 3 days later, it's September 29th. Mason accuses Lee of hiding Flora and says that this whole thing is just a ruse, basically, because she didn't want to get in trouble for kidnapping her. Then Mason storms out. The next day, it is day 21, September 30th. Mason's body is found by the police not far from the house. Matt and Shelby watch the security footage. They realize that Lee snuck out of the house and she killed Mason. Oh my goodness, she killed him. Then this fucking random guy, Cricket, he is a psychic medium and he's coming to help find their daughter Flora because he has the gift. Even Shelby says so. There are some people who have the gift. Cricket then performs a seance, and in this seance, this candle splits perfectly down in the center, and this freaks them all out, except Matt. Matt is so skeptical, but she believes it, and she wants to believe it because she wants to believe that her daughter is out there. Cricket talks to the butcher, and the butcher says that they are trespassers on her land and that they need to get the fuck out of here before they regret it. Cricket offers to help them find Flora. However, they need to pay a steep price of $25,000. We also learn during Lee's testimonial that she had a daughter before Flora that went missing in 1995. Around the 4th of July, her first daughter, Emily, goes missing. And this scene is so good. Adina Porter, she is not given her flowers. I don't ever see anybody talking about how good of an actress she is, but this scene where she tells the producers to stop the camera, she's such a good actress. Moving on, we go to the next day, day 22. It is now October 1st. Lee ends up going back to Cricket, and Cricket tells Lee about the history of the Roanoke colony and how that is somehow tied to their house. We get a flashback all the way to August 27, 1587. So this is the first event that we are given in this entire show so far. John White of the Roanoke colony leaves the colony to go on a supply run. That actually happened in real life, by the way. On October 1st, 1587, the colonists all turn on Thomason, John White's wife, but the colonists all turn on her and banish her to the woods. She's chained up in the woods, basically left to die, starving for days. Scathach offers her the heart of, I think it's a pig. She literally eats a heart, and somehow this has her possessed so that she can do her bidding. And that all happens on October 3rd of the same year. She returns and takes back power from the people who were trying to dethrone her. We move back to the present day, October 1st. While out looking for Flora, Matt is seduced by the bitch herself, Scathach. Shelby finds them like literally doing the deed, and he's under a spell, so he doesn't know what the fuck is going on. She is so fucking offended. So then we see Lee and Matt running after Shelby because Matt doesn't have any memory of this. As they get to the house, Lee is then handcuffed by the cops. Apparently, Shelby has now turned Lee in for killing Mason. So she is taken away, and Matt is absolutely horrified about what's going on. That's basically where we leave episode 3. So episode 4 is 2 days after where we leave off on episode 3. It is day 24, October 3rd, 2014, Matt tells Shelby he doesn't remember anything about the whole sexual experience with Scathach. Then we see the Piggy Man come out of nowhere to try and kill Shelby, and Elias arrives to save the day. Now, Elias, he did escape back in the 90s, and he is now here to help these girlies try to move out because they made a grand mistake. He explains to them that on October 15th, 1973, the Chens, they are an immigrant family from Taiwan, and they unfortunately bought this house in the 70s. 4 days after buying the house, on October 19th, they are reported missing. So yeah, the colonists, they don't let people stick around for too long. We then get a flashback again to that same day where Miranda and Bridget were reported missing. They are killed by having their limbs torn from their bodies. We learn that 3 hunters lived in the house in 1952. On October 3rd, they all turned their guns on each other and killed themselves. Obviously, the coast colonists must have had something to do with that. We move back to present day. On October 3rd, Elias tells them that there is a moon cycle called the blood moon cycle in October every single year, and it's 6 days. And during those days, the ghosts can slip the veil and kill people, whereas on any other day, they can really just scare them. But in this 6-day period in October, they can kill people, starting today and ending on October 8th. They got 6 days to get out of Dodge because by that point, they're literally guaranteed to die. Elias brings Matt and Shelby to Priscilla and Flora playing in the woods. However, before they can get Flora, Elias is killed by the 3 hunters. Elias does not die, but he gets arrowed. We'll see what happens to Elias later on. So all the spirits start attacking the Millers because the blood moon cycle has started, so they can start killing the Millers now. So the Millers run back into the house, and Cricket returns and tells them that he is gonna go have a meeting with the butcher and try to get Flora back. But before he can talk to the butcher, Scathach finds him and shows him the past, like literally shows him the past. It is October 23rd, 1589, a little under 2 years after the colony moved inland. Ambrose leads a rebellion against his mom, and last time that did not go over well. So Scathach convinces her to poison everybody. So the entire colony fucking dies, and then Scathach kills Thomasin. So that tethers the entire colony to the grounds after everybody is poisoned and dies. We move back to the present day. It is day 25 now, October 4th. Cricket then returns to Matt and Shelby after all night of being gone, and he tells them what he saw. He says that he has to go back and get more spells and incantations or whatever from his hotel, so he leaves and stumbles upon Flora. So he goes after her, chasing her. It is now the next day, day 26, October 5th, in the middle of the night. Matt is yet again seduced by Scathach, this time in the root cellar just outside the house. She tells him her past. Scathach is a witch coming from Europe to North America. Scathach arrives in the New World as a stowaway on a ship, and she is accused of witchcraft, so they try to burn her at the stake, but before they can, she escapes into the wilderness, and what do you know? She becomes the first supreme Coven Lord. Moving back to the present day of October 5th, Matt and Shelby hide in the house all night. Priscilla stops Thomasin from killing Flora, and Matt and Shelby take her back into the house. And as punishment for this, Thomasin kills Cricket. Oh my goodness, she disembowels him. So yeah, because they were captured by the butcher. Let's get on into the mid-season finale. Alright, so we get an extended scene by this historian who's giving us background information into who first built the house in 1792. So on October 1st, 1792, Edward Philippe Mott builds the Big Shaker Mansion. The colonists all steal and destroy his art. He's a very pretentious artist. He has a bunch of statues, a bunch of paintings in his house. Edward punishes all the maids and help at his mansion and throws them in the root cellar and locks them in there because he believes it to be one of them. However, that night, Edward is killed by the colonists shortly after building his house. So yeah, moving to the present day, it is day 27, October 6th. Shelby, Matt, and Flora go out and try to find a way out of the house that isn't the front door, and they end up finding the ghost of Edward Philippe Mott in the tunnels, and he leads them through the secret tunnels out into the woods so that they can escape without the ghosts seeing them. Oh, but before they can actually get away, they are found by the Polks. Oh, the Polks. They are tortured by the Polks all night, and they find Elias is there as well. Oh my goodness, he has a whole leg that was amputated. Mama took his leg. Oh, and another thing, these girlies, they are into cannibalism. They are into cannibalism and incest. So then Mama Polk, played by Frances Conroy, mother, she offers Shelby pieces of his leg. Oh, we catch back up with Lee, who is still with the police. She's been with the police for a couple days at this point, and she is finally let go by them because there's absolutely nothing for them to do because they couldn't find any evidence against her. So they let her go, and she sees like 20 missed texts from Matt saying that they are in trouble and she needs to come and save them. So, the next day, it is day 28, October 7th, 2014, as the Polks try to transport the Millers to the butcher, because the Polks, they have a deal with the butcher to offer up human sacrifices so that the Polks can still live on the butcher's land. So Shelby, Matt, and Flora escape the Polks, but then are shortly found by them again and tied up in their truck. Matt then kills one of the Polks. As punishment for this, Mama drives an axe into Shelby's ankle. The Polks then offer up the Millers to the butcher, but before the butcher can get her hands on them, Ambrose stands up to his mom yet again and lets them go, and just in time, Lee arrives to pick them up in her car. So they escape. Everybody's intact. They end up getting a motel room for the night, and that is being the next day. It is day 29, October 8th. The Millers check into a hotel and barely escape with their lives. So that basically does it for the mid-season finale of Roanoke. Going forward, this is going to be way harder to explain. Just stick with me. Alright, so as you can see, the cast basically doubles, especially in the side characters. There's just a lot. There's a lot going on down here. I'm gonna explain it. Before I get into episode 6, let me explain the concept. So basically, I feel as though Ryan Murphy ran out of ideas, and he felt as if he could not drag this season to be 10 episodes, so he did a little switch up in episode 5. And as you know, they got away in episode 5, and the series kind of wrapped up. They were like, well, fuck, what are we gonna do now? His idea was, let's bring all the cast together and put them in the Roanoke house for a Big Brother style reality show. And that would be like season 2 of My Roanoke Nightmare. And that's the concept for this season. That's the huge twist, is the next 5 episodes is essentially just a Big Brother found footage, big ball of camp, honestly. It's fun, it's campy, but it does not need to be 5 episodes. Oh, it could have just been like 1 or 2, if I'm being completely honest with you. It is fun, it's interesting, but I prefer the first 5 episodes if I'm being quite honest. Anyway, now that I have that explained, let me get on into the characters and explaining all the new ones. Okay, so down here we have the actors that played these characters. As you can see, Sarah Paulson without a wig. She plays somebody named Audrey Tyndall, who's a British actress who had to play Lily Rave's version of Shelby in the first season of My Roanoke Nightmare. Oh my goodness, this is gonna be so hard to explain. Then we have Cuba Gooding Jr., this time playing Dominic Banks, who is the actor who played Matt Miller from the first season of this show. And then we have Angela Bassett playing someone named Monet Tumusime. I don't know how to say her last name. Monet. She plays a woman named Monet, who's an actress who becomes an alcoholic because of the role of Lee, which I think is just so funny because you see actresses and actors all the time do like method acting and stuff, so I feel like it's funny that they have their own little take on it. And then we have Agnes Marie Winstead, played by Kathy Bates obviously, who had to play the butcher in the first season of My Roanoke Nightmare. If you're staying with me, these are the reenactments of these characters, and these are the actors out of character. I hope this chart makes sense sense to you visually, I was gonna put a couple of other big pictures because Evan Peters and Wes Bentley and I believe Lady Gaga and Dennis O'Hare, if not just Dennis O'Hare, are all considered main characters this season, which just does not make sense because they're hardly given any screen time. Therefore, I did not give them big pictures. Plus, I would not have had that much space to do this little chart situation. But these are the 4 characters, I guess, that show up over and over and over again in the first season of My Roanoke Nightmare. So that is why they all get big pictures. And then these are the actors that portrayed them. Let's move down to the 17 new side characters we have down here. So these 2 are Polks. These are the 2 that played the Polks, and these are the real Polks. This is Mama and this is Lot. Each get 2 portrayals by 2 different actors. Then we have Evan Peters, who plays Edward Philippe Mott, and then Evan Peters playing the actor who plays Edward Philippe Mott, whose name is Rory Monahan. Then we have Cricket's actor, Ashley. His name is Ashley something. Then we have the actor that played Ambrose. His name is Dylan, and he comes in later. He's not a part of the cast for the reality season that they do. Then we have the actress that played Priscilla. Then we have the real life Priscilla. This is the real life Flora. This is the real life Mason. This is the real life Scathach. And this is the actor that played Elias. I believe his name is William. I don't remember his last name. He literally has 1 scene. So slay for Dennis O'Hare. Then we have Finn Wittrock, who plays one of the Polks in real life, not in the show. He plays a real life Polk. Then we have returning queen, Miss Lana Winters, and we're gonna get into that. We have these 2, I don't even remember their names. Oh, this one's name is Sydney. I think her name is Diana, actually. Sydney and Diana, I don't know if that sounds right. These 2 are the ones that created the show. Well, he is really the one that created the show, and she is one of the producers. Then we have these 3 flops. Now, these 3 are 3 girlies that run a fan account called Army of Roanoke. She is played by Taisia Farmiga, who plays Violet and Zoe from Murder House and Coven respectively, so she gets a picture and then her 2 friends get pictures as well. I really hope that made sense. I don't know if it did. I don't know how long I just spent trying to explain those characters, but yes, everybody below the first row is either a real person or the actor that played one of the real people. Let's get on into episode 6. There's so much to explain. So much to explain. All right, so I mentioned that October 8th, 2014 was when the Millers ended up escaping from the Roanoke house. And then in May of the next year, so May 2015 to June 2015 is when the show actually starts filming and they give their testimonials. I think I mentioned that. And then that's when these girls all go and film. Remember, when they went and filmed, that is in May, so therefore the ghosts were less likely to interact with them, whereas when the Millers were living there, the ghosts were fine with interacting with them because it was during the blood moon cycle. So the actors didn't see any ghost sightings or anything. So then in October of that same year, October 2015, 5 episodes of the miniseries airs. So we begin on August 2nd and 3rd of 2016. At this point, it's an entire 2 years after the show actually started on August 8th, 2014. It is now 2 years after that. We get Sydney, who is a television producer. He is pitching the idea to his superiors about a second season for the show in which everybody, the cast and the original cast, would be returning to the set of My Roanoke Nightmare in a sort of Big Brother style show, except there would be fake scares and all these goofs and stuff to kind of play it up for the camera. And it was planned to just be 13 episodes of drama and scares and stuff at the height of the blood moon. So they get 13 episodes on air and production begins in September and October of 2016. Oh, we learn on August 3rd, Shelby does an interview with Sydney where we learn that she cheated on Matt with the actor that portrayed Matt once the show went into production, and they are now split up. Again, I'm just gonna say this half point of the season is just so unserious. Like, just the most random shit happens. So these two are broken up now, and it feels like the first episodes don't even matter. It really does. So she agrees to sign on for season 2 as long as Dominic is not allowed on set, something that Sydney hides from her because Dominic has just signed on to do this show. On September 29th, we see Agnes getting interviewed by Sydney. He basically references something that happened, a mental break that she had to go through because she went method when the butcher, and apparently the character never left. She has been banned from set. You know, Sydney is kind of hoping that she'll show up so that she will cause some drama. That same day, we see an interview with Lee where she signs on to do season 2, and the question is still up in the air of whether or not she actually killed her husband. A lot of people seem to believe that she did. We also learn this is now October 12th, so this is just a couple days before the stars arrive, and they are dressing the set when one of the crew members cuts his own head off with a chainsaw. The executives are worried about Monet, who has become an alcoholic ever since she had to portray Lee in season 1. So they tell Sydney not to willingly provide Monet with any alcohol, but if she finds alcohol on her own, they won't be liable for any of that. So Diana has run away from the set once a bunch of creepy shit happens, like the guy who cut off his own head and then they find a bunch of fucking pigs. So she leaves, she drives her car, and she's driving away and recording a video on her phone camera, and all of a sudden she gets into a fucking car wreck. Also, another thing about the rest of these episodes, everything is either recorded on a cell phone or on like clearly staged shitty cameras. They don't look good. So the cinematography, you can kiss it goodbye because it does not look good from now on. So it is finally October 13th, 2016. The entire cast has arrived. Returning actors Audrey Tyndall and Rory Monahan, who have gotten married since their time on set together. Rory, who played Edward in season 1, is now married to Audrey, who played Shelby in season 1. Anyway, so they arrive first, and then in walks Sydney with a good portion of the cast, including Shelby, Monet, and shortly after that, Matt and Lee arrive. Luckily, Dominic has not arrived yet, and Shelby is still unaware that he is in the cast. Oh, and then Agnes, she shows up on set and then threatens Audrey. Oh my goodness, then we get a scene where Shelby congratulates Audrey and Rory for getting married. She says it's never too late to find love. And Audrey takes offense to this, thinking that it's like an ageism thing. She was like, no, I was just talking about myself. Everyone is settling in, and Matt chooses to sleep in the basement rather than upstairs with Shelby. Shelby then confronts Matt and says that it was just a one-time thing with Dominic. Oh, we get a scene where Monet blames Lee for her alcoholism because she went full method with the character and ended up turning into an alcoholic herself. We see Dominic arrive to the house. Matt attacks him and gives him like a bloody nose before they are separated. Audrey is attacked while in the shower by the piggy man. Rory then runs up to try and avenge his wife and is found by the dead colonists, and they slash his throat and take his body. Oh my goodness. And that's where episode 6 ends. Alright, so from here on out, it's just a bunch of fucking nonsense, so I'm just gonna try and explain it to my best of my ability. So just so you know, there's a lot that happens in these next few episodes, and it's chaotic, so I'm gonna try and do my best. The production truck watches as Rory is killed by the colonists, and they begin to freak the fuck out. And then all of a sudden, Agnes arrives at the production truck and kills Sydney and the rest of the producers. Back at the house, Audrey suspects that Rory left to go do a movie with Brad Pitt because he was just offered a movie with Brad Pitt, I guess. And she suspects that Sydney put him up to abandoning them without telling them to scare them. We then get a scene where Agnes takes the camera from the crew in the production truck and goes into the root cellar and records a video, and she thinks that she's the butcher. So this is just Kathy Bates giving a monologue, absolutely serving. Oh, we get a scene where Dominic flirts with Shelby, and Matt tells him that he can have her because he's done with her. Agnes arrives and attacks Shelby and buries a butcher knife in her shoulder. Audrey then patches Shelby's wound up. Oh, also at this time we see all of them use their phones to record everything, especially Lee. She's very adamant about recording absolutely everything that happens because they know that some shit's about to go down because it is the blood moon. A lot of the shots are literally recorded on an iPhone. We get the most slayful scene where Lee pulls out a gun. This is just comedic. I wish I could play it for you. You really should go and watch. Even though this is just so insane for a TV show to do, this scene is so funny because she pulls out a gun and everybody is freaking the fuck out that she has a gun. It's just played perfectly. Lee, Monet, and Audrey leave through the tunnels and they are chased out by the real Edward that I did not have room for, but the real Edward Mott, who's actually not as friendly in the second season of My Roanoke Nightmare. They are chased out of the tunnels and they run to the production truck and find it and find that everyone has been slaughtered. This is so unserious, by the way. Also, Sarah Paulson's accent. Then they find Rory's body hanging from a tree. Oh, and then they are chased through the woods by ghosts and then picked up by the Polks. We then see Matt sleeping with the real Scathach that looks like that. Dominic informs Shelby of what's going on downstairs, so Shelby goes down and finds Matt sleeping with Scathach, who runs away, and Shelby kills Matt. She kills her ex-husband. This is just not gonna look good for any of these girls. It's not. Oh, and then Mama Polk ends up taking chunks off of Lee's leg and feeding it to Audrey and Monet like she did in the first season. And at the end of the episode, Agnes is killed by the real butcher up here for impersonating her. So let's get on into the very chaotic episode 8. So, at this point, the last episode took place over October 14th. It is now the next day. Shelby and Dominic are trapped upstairs by the colonists and the Chens, who threatened to kill them on their way out through the tunnels. Back at the Polk farm, Mama and Jether tell Lee the history of cannibalism. Oh yeah, they take Lee's ear. Oh, and then Lee breaks her sobriety to take the edge off, literally getting pieces of her leg cut off. So I think it's Oxy that the Polks give her. Oh my goodness, and then as these two are trying to escape, the fucking chandelier fucking falls and lands on Shelby's ankle, the same ankle that the axe was used on her last season. They go back upstairs. Miss Shelby, she does not see any way out of this because the ghosts have chased her up and down this house. So she takes a knife and Dominic freaks the fuck out. Also, so unexpected because she's supposed to be like the main character and she dies in episode 8, which is such a random fuck-ass move. Back at the Polk, we see Lee ask Jether for the camera that he has, asks him to let her record a video for her daughter Flora in case Flora ever got a chance to see it. So Lee then confesses to killing her husband Mason. She confesses. Then Lee seduces Jether and escapes and kills him. Then in another room, the Polks are taking Audrey and Monet's teeth, and Monet ends up getting out and leaving Shelby there. And then Shelby gets her fucking tooth taken out, but it's a fake tooth. So they take her veneer off. Lee then frees Audrey and they escape together. And when they get back to the house, it's nighttime, so it's been a whole day since they left. These two then find the dead body of Matt, and Lee has a whole fit about it because obviously that's her brother. Then go upstairs and find Dominic in the bathroom with Shelby's dead body. They are led to believe that he killed both of them because he wanted to split them up. They banish him from the bathroom, and this is when the Piggy Man kills him. Just a quick rundown. At the end of this episode, the only people that we have left. By the way, this whole thing takes place very early in the morning, so it's still dark outside. When it gets light, there's a knock at the door, and what do you know? The actor that played Ambrose, his name is Dylan, he comes and surprises them, and he's supposed to be one of the, quote, scares that was supposed to happen halfway through the season. Also, anyway, let me just run down about who's still alive. Lee, Audrey, and Monet are the only main characters still alive. Matt was killed by Shelby, Shelby killed herself. Agnes was killed by the original butcher who has been dead for centuries. And Dominic was killed by Piggy Man. So all we have left are Audrey, Monet, and Lee at the start of episode 9. Dylan has arrived to be one of the scares. He has a Piggy Man costume on. We'll get into that in episode 9. Alright, so episode 9 introduces us to 3 new characters, Sophie, Milo, and Todd. They are vloggers, a part of a fan site called Army of Roanoke. They're in the woods trying to find the Roanoke house, and they run into the dead body of Diana. I don't know, they run into her dead body, and they get really fucking freaked out. So they go to the police, and the police do not believe their story at all. Meanwhile, at the house, Dylan, Lee, Audrey set out to go to the Polk farm to try and get the camera back so that they could use it as evidence against the Polks. But really, Lee just wants to go there so that she can get rid of the video of her confessing to murder. So at the Polk farm, they get Monet. Lee ends up getting the camera, but before they can leave, Dylan is killed by the Polks. Monet and Audrey escape together, and Lee is left at the Polk farm alone. Lee escapes into the woods. By the way, this is all still October 15th, very late at night. Back at the house, Audrey and Monet are looking over the camera footage because somehow they got their hands on the camera after Lee dropped it. So they watched the video of her confessing to killing her husband, Mason. And they're like, well, that makes sense why she wanted to go back for it now. Oh, also in the woods, randomly, we see Lee get persuaded by Scathitch to eat a pig's heart, very similarly to what we saw in season 1 with Thomason. And so now Lee is possessed by the witch. Oh yeah, these 3 vloggers go up to Lee because they see her hanging out in the woods and they're like, what is she doing here? And they're absolutely obsessed with the show, so they know who she is. And they go up to her and she fucking kills one of them. Oh my goodness, because she's possessed, by the way. Lee is possessed. These 2 remaining vloggers run away and head to the production truck where Sydney and the rest of the crew have been slaughtered. And they watch as Lee arrives back at the house and they start freaking the fuck out because in the house are Audrey and Monet. They have a confrontation where Monet accuses her of being a murderer, and she's already possessed and in the mood to kill somebody. So Miss Girl pushes her off the grand staircase and she falls onto the chandelier, which has like a conveniently placed very large spike on it, and Monet dies. So the only 2 alive are Lee and Audrey. At this point, the vloggers head to the house. It is surrounded by the dead colonists. Then, by the way, that's such an iconic moment when Lee pushes Monet down. And then Audrey runs and escapes into the root cellar, but before she can make it down on her own, Lee pushes her down and she definitely breaks a couple bones on the way down because it's a far drop. There's this extended, very graphic scene where Sophie and Milo, oh, I don't know how to say this in a PG way, they are killed in a very graphic way, and it's from first-person perspective because they're wearing GoPros, so it just makes it even worse. After all that carnage, it is now the next morning, finally, October 16th of 2016. The police arrive to the house and discover all these dead bodies. The blood moon is over. Lee is the only one still alive. However, they also find Audrey in the root cellar, and she is very much still alive, and she accuses Lee of killing people, and Lee's like, what? Audrey takes the gun off of a police officer and tries to shoot Lee, but before she can, the police shoot Audrey down, and Lee escapes as the sole survivor. Now, on to the finale. Alright, so we finally made it to the finale of Roanoke. We see a flashback to March 15th, 2016, where the entire cast attends Pele Fest, and then we move on to June 15th, 2016. We learn that Lee stands trial for the murders of Monet and Todd, because those are the only ones that were able to be proven by the camera footage found. The TV show does air. Season 2 of the fictional show My Roanoke Nightmare does air, or someone leaks it online. I can't exactly remember what happened, but it does air. A lot of people question if it's real or fake. In universe, this whole thing doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. She is acquitted of the murder of Monet and Todd. And then on August 24th of the same year, so this is, again, a whole year after the last events happened, and 3 years since the original events happened, Lee stands trial for, again, this time, for the murder of her husband Mason, and is again acquitted because she was under the influence when she made the confession tape at the Polks. So this episode, this finale, kind of plays out like you're watching a bunch of different TV shows. They have like a knockoff of the TV show Snapped, if you've ever watched that. It's about like people that like go crazy and kill people. They have like a knockoff of that. They have an interview with Miss Lana Winters. They have a Spirit Chasers episode that we watch. This is just a bunch of wasted time, to be honest. The episode of Cracked airs on, they call it Cracked, it's really called Snapped in real life. The episode of Cracked airs on September 30th, 2017, exploring Lee's past and if she actually did do the crimes. Then we learn on October 2nd, 2017, Mason's parents have filed for full custody of Flora. On October 30th of 2017, Flora returns to the Roanoke house herself, and her grandparents are very much suspicious that Lee had something to do with her disappearance. Oh, and then that same day, Lee appears on a special with Miss Lana Winters from Asylum, and Lana questions Lee about Flora going missing, something that she knows absolutely nothing about. A few days later, on November 3rd, 2017, a Spirit Chasers episode is filmed at the house. It's essentially just like a ghost hunting show. I didn't put any of their pictures on the board, but the actor that played Cricket from season 1 of Roanoke appears on the show as like a guest star, and he ends up dying, and all the cast and crew of that show dies. But before they do, Lee shows up to the house looking for her daughter Flora. She does find Flora, and the next morning there is basically this manhunt for Lee in the house, and she will not come out of the house, and she's basically holding her daughter hostage in this house. I don't think Flora actually wants to leave because she misses her friend Priscilla. So Lee ends up offering to stay with Priscilla to protect her from the butcher. In exchange, Flora has to go back and live with her grandparents, and she can come visit her mom whenever she wants. So Lee ends up exploding the house, burning the house, and then killing herself while she's still in it. Flora escapes with her life, and that about does it. It ends it on November 4th, 2017. So yeah, overall, Roanoke is a very bloated season, as you can see. I don't even know, can you even see the bottom? I didn't even realize you couldn't see these, but overall, Roanoke is a very bloated season. It goes all the way almost to the bottom, and there's only 10 episodes, if you could believe. There is so much that happens, and so many characters, as you can see. Essentially, with the whole reenactment situation, and then the season 2 situation where they all come back in the same house together, that adds to the feeling that it's a very bloated season, because it essentially feels like every actor is playing 2 different characters this season, which a lot of them are. But overall, again, not my favorite season. It's definitely interesting, it's definitely fun, it's definitely different from what we're used to seeing, but I gotta tell you, it's really on the lower end of my list. It's not my least favorite season, but I believe it's definitely my second or third least favorite season, unfortunately. But I understand at the same time why so many people liked it, because it was so different from anything they'd seen before, and the American Horror Story formula was probably getting a little bit boring at that point, which I understand for sure. But I do wish they would have gone back to more character-driven storytelling, and stayed away from the excessive plot that they have going on here, because I don't think Ryan Murphy really does plot-driven story all that well compared to character-driven story. But yeah, that is Roanoke, my recap of it. I really hope I made sense. This season is just so fucking hard to explain. I am not looking forward to Apocalypse, because that one is just so much worse when it comes to the plot and the timeline and everything. I really hope I made sense, I really do. But basically, if we just need a little rundown, in season 1 we've got our original girls. Everything happened to them in 2014. September and October of 2014. Then we have the reenactments, which were shot in the spring of 2015, and as well as their testimonials. And then in the following October 2016, that would be, everybody returned for the Return to Roanoke season. And then the following year, in October of 2017, after almost everybody is dead from the sequel, Lee returns to the house and kills herself and burns the house down. It is really a 3-year story spread across different TV shows, different specials, different random things that all revolve around this one house. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I really hope I made sense of this season, because it's, for the non-viewer who hasn't seen this show, it might be extraordinarily confusing. And I really apologize if I didn't do a good job. Hotel might have also been a little hard to explain, because it has the opposite problem that this season does, where there's absolutely like no plot going on in Hotel. I feel as though my skills as a recapper are not shining in these last 2 videos. So I hope you enjoyed them. If you would like to go ahead and leave a like down below, that would make my day. Go ahead and go into the comments and let me know what you would like me to cover next. I'm gonna go. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will see you guys in the next one.